Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Jum'a, Minister of Education, Your Excellency, Ms. Fatima Al-Sayrafi, Minister of Tourism, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests. Thank you also to the organizers, His Excellency Omar Al-Ba'wood, for the invitation to present today. I'll give the topic I was assigned was how counseling can contribute and career guidance can contribute to better outcomes in higher education. So what I'd like to talk about is how you can use nudging in career guidance. And this is based on some research by, let me bring up the names again. This is based on some research by a paper by Mette Trier Damgaard and Helena Sicht Nielsen in the 2018 Education Economics Review. A very good paper. So these two faces may be familiar. The one on the left is Cass Sunstein, who's a Harvard professor, and the one on the right is Robert Thaler, who's at the Graduate School of Business in the University of Chicago. And they're famous, well, most famous for producing a book called Nudge, which looked at how you can use very simple, non-invasive interventions to help people in decision-making. And one of the quotes they have in their book, which is presented, I'll read out very briefly: people will need nudges for decisions that are difficult and rare, for which they do not get prompt feedback, and when they have trouble translating aspects of the situation into terms that they can easily understand. And this is something that very much applies to career choices, whether it's picking a major in university or picking a career. Once you can start picking where you're going to do your internship, training, and so on and so forth. So given this reality, we should be looking to use nudges where we can to support students and people in the early stages of their career. Now, the problem is that when you're trying to make these decisions, there are what we call behavioral barriers to educational attainment. People have, the human mind is very powerful, but it's imperfect, and it has what's called a series of cognitive biases which impede decision-making. Some of the ones which apply particularly to the case of educational choices are self-control, so people have limited self-control. It's difficult for them to sometimes make decisions based on their long-term interest. They may pick a subject which is easier, even if it means lower benefits in the long run. People have limited attention and cognitive ability. If you've ever looked through a course catalog in university, the choices can be bewildering and can be very difficult to digest that information and make an informed choice. Loss aversion, people can be sometimes overly scared of making a wrong decision. Default bias, so sometimes people just, whatever the default choice is, they'll stick with that without necessarily giving it the attention it deserves. And then the image reflects what we call social image concerns. People also are very strongly affected by their friends, by their peers, and this can lead to some inferior decisions. And then finally, biased beliefs. People, because of their limited information, may have assumptions that certain careers and certain majors will have better outcomes than they would like, and this can lead to distorted decision-making. Now, how can counseling-related nudges help? How can these sort of interventions that Thaler and Sunstein describe in their book and that are exposed in the research that I mentioned at the beginning help people make better decisions? And very much career guidance is a vehicle for delivering these nudges, whether it's career guidance in a higher education institution or in through ministries of labor or whatever system. So they can change defaults. So rather than assuming that put students on a default path that is potentially better, and then they'll hopefully stick to that. Framing. So framing is a very simple issue. Sometimes the way in which choices are presented without actually changing the material consequences can help. And here, career counselors, part of the skill they have is understanding what the kind of frame that will help their student make the best decision is. Peer group manipulation. So again, career counselors can present information about what peers are doing to students in order to help them make better decisions. They should tell them that, well, this many students took this choice, or the students who took this choice achieved the following outcome, and the way in which that information is presented can definitely improve decisions. Deadlines, for sure. When I was in high school and we had deadlines for university applications, those deadlines which were internal to the school I was studying at were critical to me staying on track and applying to the universities and getting my applications, because many people without these deadlines would miss. And goal setting, of course, career guidance counselors are central to helping students put goals that are realistic and that help them build their confidence. Informational nudges, so very simple. The way in which the information is presented to the student can help them make more intelligent decisions. The career counselor will learn how to filter the information and pick out the most important parts. Assistance, obviously, and then boosting skills to alleviate self-control problems. So we all suffer from, sometimes some myopic thinking, some short-termism. And again, career guidance counselors are very skilled in helping us develop more long-term thinking strategies. Now, based on the research, what we find is that it's very important that these interventions are tailored to the audience, and context is very important. So there are a lot of field experiments run, and by field experiments, I mean not experiments run in a laboratory on humans, I mean experiments run in the field. People working in career guidance will try different strategies and use randomized control and use that to estimate the impact of different strategies. And what they find is that, with the different nudges that Thaler and Sunstein and the research they spawned are deployed, the effect depends very much on the person. Some people, these nudges have no effect. Some people, these nudges may even have a negative effect, but some people do respond very positively to these nudges. And more importantly, and these characteristics are things which need to be studied and career counselors need to be aware of. And what these characteristics are highly sensitive both to the intervention itself and to the context in which it's being rolled out. Now, the challenge we have in the Arabian Gulf is that the level of field experimentation we have is very low. So this massive literature that is summarized in that education economics paper I mentioned, that is also summarized in the extensive work by Sunstein and Thaler, is basically research conducted in Western countries, often the UK and the US. And the context differs in the Arabian Gulf. We have many different situations, we have different students, we have different goals, different cultural contexts. And so it's very important that we address this shortcoming in this lack of field experimentation. So finally, what should we do? We should encourage more field experiments to study to help us refine our career counseling methods. We need to run field experiments professionally and consistently. If you look at the field experiment literature in the Arabian Gulf, it's very, very small across all fields, but certainly in the case of education economics. There are also cultural barriers to experimentation. One of the reasons why we don't have experimentation in the Arabian Gulf is that there's a culture of thinking that people who experiment are people who don't know what they're doing, and that somebody who doesn't know what they're doing doesn't need to experiment. And that's something which I think we need to overcome. People need to realize that admitting your ignorance and running an experiment is a way of demonstrating confidence and is a way of helping people get to better outcomes. And finally, career guidance counselors must work with social scientists trained in field experimental methods. In Bahrain, we have many excellent universities with very good educational departments of education. Just to give a few examples, University of Bahrain, Arabian Gulf University, Ahli University, a lot of personal colleagues who are excellent educational scholars working in Bahrain, and the same is true of all the Gulf countries. These educational scholars need to be working institutionally with ministries of education, with higher education institutions to run field experiments that can help us improve our career guidance. Thank you very much.